The city always had a way of swallowing people. Neon lights reflected in puddles, cars streamed endlessly, and conversations drifted through the evening air like pieces of forgotten music. For Daniel, the city was a cage and a comfort at the same time. At 24, he was restless, ambitious, and a little lonely, though he never admitted that to anyone, not even himself. He worked as a freelance designer, often hiding behind his laptop in cafes, sipping black coffee, headphones on, pretending the world outside didn't matter. Yet a part of him longed for something real, something alive beyond pixels and deadlines. He didn't know it yet, but his life was about to shift subtly at first, and then with the weight of inevitability. The cafe. That night, the rain had just stopped. He ducked into his usual corner cafe, the kind that smelled faintly of roasted beans and warm pastries. Soft jazz played in the background, the low hum of conversation filling the air. The windows fogged from the heat inside, blurring the city lights beyond. Daniel shook the water from his hair, ordered his drink, and settled into his usual spot near the back. He opened his laptop, but before he could type a word, he noticed her. She was sitting alone by the window, her face half lit by the golden glow of a hanging lamp. Long, wavy hair framed her features, and her eyes, though focused on a book in her hand, seemed to hold something sharp, curious, alive. She wasn't just pretty, she was magnetic, the kind of presence that pulled attention without asking for it. Her lips moved slightly as she read, as if tasting the words. Daniel tried not to stare. But then, as if sensing the weight of his gaze, she looked up. Their eyes met for the briefest second, long enough for him to feel a spark of recognition in someone he'd never seen before. She didn't smile, didn't frown, just returned to her book. But Daniel felt something inside him shift. A chance connection. For the next half hour, Daniel pretended to work while stealing glances at her. He noticed small details, the way she tucked her hair behind her ear when concentrating, how her fingers lingered on the edge of the page before turning it, the faint line of a scar just above her wrist. She wasn't fragile, there was a strength in her, an independence that made him wonder about her story. Finally, she closed the book, set it down, and stood. His heart sank a little, thinking she was leaving. But instead, she walked toward the counter, passing right by his table. The faint scent of her perfume lingered, a mix of jasmine and something darker, almost like smoke. On instinct more than courage, Daniel spoke. "Hey, sorry, but, was that the secret history you were reading?" She paused, surprised. Her eyes studied him, cautious but not unkind. "Yes," she said after a moment. "You've read it?" Daniel nodded, pushing his laptop aside. "Twice. One of my favorites. Dark, but brilliant." Her lips curved into the faintest smile. "Most people I mention it to haven't even heard of it." "Then most people don't know what they're missing," Daniel replied. Something softened in her expression. She tilted her head slightly, as though weighing him. Finally, she extended a hand. "Emma." "Daniel," he said, taking it. Her hand was warm, firm, lingering just long enough to make his pulse quicken. Conversation in the rain. They ended up talking. What started as a casual exchange about books stretched into a long conversation about art, music, and the strange loneliness of city life. She was older than him, he guessed late 20s, maybe 30, though he didn't dare ask. There was an assuredness in the way she spoke, a quiet confidence that made him lean in, wanting more. Outside, rain began again, soft at first, then harder, drumming against the glass. Neither of them seemed to notice. "You spend a lot of time here," she asked. "More than I should," he admitted with a laugh. "It's either this place or my apartment, and the walls there don't talk back." She smirked. "So you hide here with your laptop?" "Something like that." "And you? This your usual spot?" Emma hesitated, then shrugged. "Sometimes. I like places where no one expects anything from me. Just a book, a coffee, quiet." Daniel studied her. "And yet you're talking to me." Her eyes flickered with amusement. "Maybe you're the exception." The words hung between them, heavier than the air. For the first time in a long while, Daniel felt the pulse of genuine attraction, not just physical, but something deeper, something alive. Leaving together. The cafe closed later than most, but eventually the barista began wiping tables, hinting at the end of the night. Daniel didn't want it to end. He couldn't remember the last time a conversation had felt so natural, so unforced. When they finally stood to leave, the rain had slowed to a drizzle. Emma pulled her coat tighter, glancing at him with a half-smile. "Do you walk or take the train?" she asked. "Train," Daniel said. "But I don't mind walking." She gave him a look, playful, testing. "Then walk me a bit. It's not far." So they walked, side by side through the damp streets. The city was quieter now, the chaos muted under the rain. Street lights reflected in the wet pavement, casting long golden streaks. Daniel kept sneaking glances at her, wondering if she noticed. At one point, their hands brushed. Neither pulled away. The doorstep. They reached her building, a tall, ivy-clad structure with wrought iron balconies. She stopped at the entrance, turning to face him. "Well," she said softly, "this is me." Daniel nodded, searching for words. He didn't want to sound desperate, but he also didn't want to leave without something more. "I'm glad I said something," he finally managed. "About the book." Her smile widened slightly. "So am I." There was a pause. He could feel the rain cooling on his skin, the faint hum of the city around him. He wanted to lean in, to kiss her, but something held him back: hesitation, respect, maybe fear of rushing what felt fragile and new. Emma seemed to sense it. She stepped closer, close enough that he caught the warmth of her breath. Her eyes lingered on his, searching. Then, with the faintest touch, she placed her hand on his chest. Not a kiss, not yet, just a gesture, intimate in its own right. "Good night, Daniel," she whispered. And before he could say anything, she slipped inside, leaving him standing there, heart pounding. Aftermath. Daniel walked home in a daze. Every detail replayed in his mind: the way she laughed, the curve of her smile, the mysterious glint in her eyes. He didn't know what this was, or if he'd even see her again. But something in him had awakened. For the first time in months, maybe years, he wasn't just existing. He was alive. And though he didn't know it yet, this was only the beginning. The days that followed were strangely restless for Daniel. His routine: the coffee, the freelance work, the late nights staring at a glowing screen, suddenly felt shallow. Every thought of Emma stirred something in him. He tried to drown it with work, but the memory of her voice, the subtle curve of her smile, the warmth of her hand on his chest lingered like an aftertaste. He didn't know if he'd see her again. Maybe that night was a chance encounter, a fleeting spark. But something in him refused to accept that. The return. 3 days later, he found himself at the cafe again, not even pretending it was for work. His laptop sat unopened on the table as he scanned the door every time it opened. Hours slipped by, the crowd shifted, and just when he was ready to give up, she walked in. Emma. She wore a dark coat, hair slightly damp from the rain, carrying that same quiet aura that seemed to command attention without effort. Daniel's pulse quickened. He debated pretending not to notice her, but she spotted him first. Her expression flickered with recognition, surprise, then amusement. She walked over. "Back at your usual spot?" she asked, teasing. "Guilty," Daniel admitted. "And you're back with your book?" "This time, yes," she said, holding up a small paperback. But instead of heading to a separate table, she pulled out the chair opposite him. "Unless you mind." He shook his head quickly. "Not at all." And just like that, she was there again, closer this time, her presence almost overwhelming in its ease. A deeper conversation. They talked again, but now the conversation shifted. Less about books, more about themselves. Daniel found out she was 29, worked in publishing, and had lived in the city for 5 years. She loved art galleries, late-night walks, and disliked the superficial chatter of social events. "And you?" she asked. "What do you actually do, besides haunt cafes?" Daniel chuckled. "Freelance designer. Mostly websites, logos, that kind of thing. Sometimes it pays the bills, sometimes it doesn't." Emma tilted her head, studying him. "You don't sound very passionate about it." He hesitated. "I like creating. I just haven't figured out what really drives me yet." Her gaze softened, but there was a sharpness too, as if she saw through him. "You're still young. That's not a crime." 24 feels old some days, he admitted. Emma laughed, a low, rich sound. "Trust me. You'll look back at 24 and laugh at yourself." Her laughter lingered in him, warm and disarming. The first spark. At one point, their knees brushed under the table. Daniel froze, wondering if it was accidental. But Emma didn't move her leg. Instead, her eyes held his, daring him to acknowledge it. He felt heat rush through him, but he kept his voice steady. "Is this intentional?" Her lips curved slightly. "Maybe. Do you mind?" "Not even a little," he said quietly. The air between them shifted, charged, alive. The cafe around them faded into background noise. He could smell her perfume again, subtle and intoxicating. He wanted to lean across the table, to close the distance, but something told him she enjoyed the slow burn, the waiting, the tension. And so he waited. An invitation. They stayed until closing again. When they stepped outside, the night was crisp, the rain finally gone. Emma wrapped her coat tighter, glancing at him with that same half-smile. "You know," she said, "you're easier to talk to than most people." "Most people don't read the right books," he teased. Her eyes sparkled. "Maybe. Or maybe you just listen better." There was a pause. Daniel wanted to ask if he could see her again, but before he could, she spoke. "Do you like art?" "I do," he said quickly. "Why?" "There's an exhibit tomorrow night. Small gallery, not far from here. Come with me." The invitation hung in the air. Daniel felt a rush of excitement. "I'd like that," he said. The gallery night. The next evening, Daniel dressed with more care than usual: dark shirt, clean jacket, the faintest trace of cologne. He felt nervous, like he was stepping into something unfamiliar. Emma arrived already waiting outside the gallery, elegant in a black dress and heels, a faint shimmer on her lips. She looked different. Less casual, more magnetic. People passing by turned their heads, but she only had eyes for him. "You clean up well," she said with a smile. "And you look," he hesitated, searching for words. "Incredible." "Careful," she teased. "Flattery gets you places." Inside, the gallery buzzed with quiet voices and clinking glasses. Paintings lined the walls, some abstract, others starkly realistic. Daniel tried to focus, but most of his attention stayed on Emma. She moved gracefully, pausing to study each piece, occasionally tilting her head with a thoughtful hum. At one point, she leaned close to him, her shoulder brushing his. "See this one," she whispered, pointing to a painting of blurred figures entwined. "People think it's chaotic. I think it's about control and surrender." Her breath was warm against his ear. Daniel swallowed. "That's one way to see it." "Do you disagree?" she asked, eyes glinting. "No," he said, his voice lower now. "I think you're right." She lingered close, not moving away, as if testing how much tension he could hold. After the gallery, they left late, the city alive with lights. Emma didn't suggest parting ways this time. Instead, she glanced at him. "Walk me home again." "Always," Daniel replied. The walk felt different now, closer, charged. Their hands brushed more than once, until finally Daniel took hers. She didn't resist. Her fingers tightened around his, deliberate and certain. By the time they reached her building, his heart was hammering. She stopped at the entrance, turning to him. "Do you want to come up for a drink?" she asked, her voice casual, but her eyes anything but. Daniel hesitated only for a second. Yes. Inside her world. Her apartment was warm, filled with books, framed art, and the faint scent of vanilla and wine. She slipped off her coat and shoes, moving with the ease of someone completely comfortable in her space. Daniel followed, unsure where to place his hands, what to do with the energy coursing through him. Emma poured them each a glass of red wine. They sat on the couch, close enough that their knees touched. Conversation came easily, but the pauses were heavy, filled with unspoken questions. At one point, Emma set her glass down and leaned back, studying him. "You're nervous," she said softly. Daniel gave a small laugh. "A little, yeah." Her hand reached out, resting lightly on his arm. "Don't be. I wouldn't have invited you here if I didn't want you here." His breath caught. The warmth of her touch spread through him like fire. For a moment, they just looked at each other. Then, slowly, deliberately, Emma leaned in. The first kiss. Her lips brushed his soft, lingering, tasting faintly of wine. The kiss deepened gradually, unhurried, as if she was in complete control of the pace. Daniel followed her lead, his hand resting gently against her cheek. The world outside vanished. There was only her, the warmth of her body, the press of her mouth, the intoxicating pull that left him dizzy. When they finally pulled back, Emma's eyes searched his, a playful glint in them. "Better," she whispered. Daniel laughed breathlessly. "Much." She smiled, leaning back just slightly, as if reminding him that she decided the rhythm of this dance. The edge of more. They talked and kissed again, the night slipping away. At one point, Emma curled against him, her head on his shoulder, fingers absent-mindedly tracing patterns along his arm. It was intimate without being hurried, passionate without crossing into something reckless. Daniel wanted more, he couldn't deny it. But he also didn't want to break whatever fragile balance she was weaving. When the night grew late, Emma finally stood, stretching. "It's probably time you head home," she said, though her voice carried a softness, as if she almost wished otherwise. Daniel nodded, though part of him ached to stay. At the door, she kissed him once more, longer this time, slower, like a promise. "Good night, Daniel," she whispered. And just like before, he left with his heart racing, his mind consumed by her. Aftermath. Back in his apartment, Daniel lay awake, staring at the ceiling. His lips still tingled from her kiss, his chest ached with anticipation. This wasn't just attraction, it was something more dangerous, more consuming. Emma was a storm, and he was already caught in it. And he didn't want out. The following week blurred into a rhythm Daniel hadn't known he'd wanted. His days felt sharper, more alive, because each evening carried the possibility of seeing her. Emma wasn't predictable. Sometimes she would text late, inviting him for coffee, other times she would vanish for days without explanation. He found himself waiting for her messages, checking his phone too often, his focus slipping from work. It frustrated him, but the pull was irresistible. She was unpredictable, magnetic, and he couldn't let go. The distance. On Wednesday, she didn't reply at all. Daniel sent a simple "want to meet tonight," and received nothing. By midnight, the silence stung. He tried to rationalize. She was busy, she had her own life, her own rhythms. But his chest tightened anyway. It wasn't that he thought she owed him anything, it was the not knowing that gnawed at him. The next evening, when his phone buzzed, he grabbed it immediately. "Come to the bar on 5th, 9 p.m. dress decent." That was it. No explanation. Just a command. The bar. The bar was dim, low lights casting shadows across dark wooden tables. Music pulsed softly, conversation buzzing just above it. Daniel spotted her immediately at a corner table, a glass of whiskey in hand, dressed in black that clung just enough to draw every eye in the room. But she wasn't alone. A man sat beside her, tall, confident, leaning too close. He laughed at something she said, and Emma smiled, tilting her head in that way she did when amused. Daniel's stomach twisted. For a second, he considered leaving. But then Emma's eyes found him across the room. She didn't wave, didn't move, just held his gaze, as if daring him to come over. So he did. "A test." "Daniel," she said smoothly as he reached the table. "This is Marcus." "Marcus, Daniel." The other man gave a nod, polite but dismissive. Daniel sat, tension coiling in his chest. Emma sipped her drink, eyes flicking between them with something mischievous. She was watching, no, orchestrating. Daniel realized with a jolt that this wasn't casual. This was deliberate. They made small talk for a while, Marcus speaking too much, Emma encouraging him, Daniel contributing little. But underneath, a current buzzed, sharp and electric. Finally, Marcus excused himself to the bar. Emma leaned closer to Daniel, her perfume enveloping him. "You're jealous," she whispered. Daniel stiffened. "Should I not be?" Her lips curved. "Maybe. Maybe not." "Why invite me here, then?" he asked, voice low. "Because I wanted to see how you'd handle it." The word stung, but also thrilled him. She was testing him, pushing him. The confrontation. When Marcus returned, Emma drained her glass and stood. "Thanks for the drink, Marcus. I'm leaving now." She turned to Daniel. "Walk me out." Outside, the night air was cool. They walked in silence until Daniel finally spoke. "What was that?" Emma glanced at him, amused. "A reminder." "Of what?" "That you don't own me," she said simply. "And that I choose who I spend my time with." Daniel stopped, frustration bubbling. "I know that. But watching you with him made you burn a little," she finished for him, eyes gleaming. He exhaled sharply. "Yes." Emma stepped closer, her voice dropping. "Good. That means you care. That means this isn't just casual for you." Daniel stared at her, torn between anger and desire. She reached out, fingers tracing his jaw lightly, calming him even as she stirred him deeper into her orbit. "You want me, Daniel," she whispered. "But wanting me means handling me on my terms." The vulnerability. Back at her apartment, the air between them remained charged. Emma poured another drink, handed it to him, then sat across from him, legs crossed. "Tell me what you're thinking," she said softly. Daniel hesitated. "I'm thinking. I don't understand you." Her smile was faint. "Most people don't." "I want to," he admitted. Emma studied him, her eyes unreadable. Then, unexpectedly, she said, "I was engaged once. Years ago. It ended badly. He wanted to control me. To fit me into his little box of who I should be. I swore I'd never let anyone do that again." Daniel blinked, caught off guard by the sudden openness. "I don't want to control you," he said quietly. Her gaze lingered on him, searching. Finally, she leaned closer, her voice barely above a whisper. "Then don't try. Just, hold on." The tension. They kissed again, deeper this time, the kind of kiss that blurred the edges of thought. Daniel's hand slid around her waist, pulling her closer, and for a moment, the world narrowed to the heat of her body against his. Emma pulled back slightly, her breath ragged, her lips curved in a teasing smile. "You feel that?" she murmured. "Yes," he whispered. "That's what happens when you let go," she said, eyes gleaming. She kissed him again, slower this time, as though teaching him a rhythm. And then she pulled away, standing abruptly. "It's late," she said, though her voice was husky now. "You should go." Daniel blinked, caught between frustration and longing. "You're serious?" Her smile widened slightly. "Very." And though part of him burned with desire, he obeyed. The aftermath. Walking home, Daniel's chest felt tight. She was pulling him in, then pushing him away, testing the edges of his patience, his pride, his desire. And yet, instead of breaking, he wanted her more. He lay awake again that night, turning her words over in his mind. "You don't own me. Hold on." He didn't know where this was heading. But he knew one thing, he was already too deep to back out. The next step. Days later, she called him, not text, but an actual call. Her voice was softer this time, less sharp. "Come over tomorrow night," she said. "Why?" Daniel asked, cautious. "Because," she said simply, "I want to see if you're ready." "For what?" Her silence stretched, deliberate. Finally, she answered, "For more." And before he could ask what that meant, she hung up. That night, Daniel stared at the ceiling again, his mind racing. He didn't know what awaited him. All he knew was that Emma was leading him deeper into a world he barely understood. And he was willing to follow. Daniel arrived at Emma's apartment the next evening with his heart pounding harder than it should. He had been turning her words over all day. I want to see if you're ready. For more. More of what? He didn't know. But he knew he wanted it, whatever she meant, wherever it would lead. The invitation. Emma opened the door barefoot, her hair loose, wearing a simple silk blouse that seemed to glow under the warm apartment lights. She looked different tonight, not just beautiful, but deliberate, like she had set the stage for something. Hi, she said, her voice soft but carrying weight. Hi, Daniel managed, his throat suddenly dry. She stepped aside, letting him in. The apartment smelled faintly of vanilla again, with the low hum of music playing from a corner speaker, something slow, moody, almost hypnotic. On the table sat 2 glasses of wine, already poured. Emma gestured to the couch. Sit. He obeyed, feeling the tension coil in him. She sat across from him, curling one leg beneath her, studying him as if he were a puzzle she wasn't finished solving. You look nervous, she said finally. I am, Daniel admitted. Her lips curved. Good. The game. They talked at first about books, work, small things, but beneath every word lay something unspoken. Emma leaned in closer than usual, brushing his hand occasionally, her gaze lingering longer. Finally, she set her glass down and tilted her head. Do you trust me, Daniel? The question startled him. I think so. You think? She repeated, her voice low, almost teasing. I do, he said firmly. Her eyes narrowed slightly, but she smiled. Good. Because if you don't, this won't work. He leaned forward. What won't? Emma didn't answer immediately. Instead, she rose slowly, moving around the couch to stand behind him. He felt her presence close, the faint brush of her fingertips along his shoulder. You're used to control, she whispered near his ear. But with me, you don't get to have it. His breath caught. Emma moved in front of him again, kneeling slightly so her eyes were level with his. I set the pace. You follow. Understand? Daniel swallowed hard, then nodded. Yes. The surrender. She smiled faintly, then leaned in and kissed him. It wasn't rushed, it was deliberate, lingering, commanding. Daniel responded eagerly, but she slowed him each time, controlling the rhythm. When he tried to pull her closer, she placed a firm hand on his chest, holding him back. Patience, she murmured against his lips. The word sent a shiver through him. Minutes stretched into something timeless, kissing, pausing, teasing. Every time he thought the moment might tip into more, Emma pulled away slightly, her eyes gleaming with quiet power. You want me, she said softly, almost like an accusation. Yes, Daniel whispered. But wanting isn't the same as having, she replied. Not yet. The story. At some point, she broke the spell, standing and refilling their glasses. Daniel sat, chest tight, trying to steady himself. You once asked why I'm like this, Emma said suddenly, her back turned as she poured the wine. Yes, Daniel said carefully. She returned, handing him a glass, then sat beside him, this time closer than before. I told you about my engagement. What I didn't tell you is how it ended. He didn't just want control. He wanted obedience. Blind obedience. And for a while, I gave it to him. I thought love meant surrendering yourself completely. Her voice hardened slightly. But it broke me. It took me years to piece myself back together. And now, I'll never hand myself over like that again. If someone's with me, they have to want me, not a version of me they can shape. Daniel listened, heart heavy. Emma. I don't want to change you. I just want to understand you. She looked at him for a long moment, her eyes softer now. Then maybe you're different. The heat. They kissed again, but this time Emma let it deepen more, her hands sliding to the back of his neck, pulling him closer. Daniel felt the fire surge in him, his body aching for her. Her blouse brushed against him, her breath warm against his skin. He reached for her waist again, and this time she let him hold her briefly. But just as the moment threatened to tip over the edge, she pulled back, pressing a finger to his lips. Not yet, she whispered. Daniel groaned softly, half frustrated, half dizzy with want. You're torturing me. Emma's smile was wicked. No. I'm teaching you. Teaching me what? Her lips hovered close to his. That waiting makes it better. And then she kissed him again, slow and searing. The night's end. Hours slipped by in that rhythm, kisses, pauses, teasing touches, whine and whispered words. Daniel felt like he was being drawn into her orbit completely, reshaped by her gravity. When the clock struck midnight, Emma finally pulled away, standing. You should go, she said, though her eyes lingered on him hungrily. Daniel stood reluctantly, his body alive with restless energy. At the door, she leaned in and kissed him once more, deeper than before, as if rewarding him for his patience. Good night, Daniel, she murmured. He stared at her, breathless. When will I see you again? Her smile was enigmatic. Soon. And with that, she closed the door, leaving him standing in the hallway, heart racing, lips tingling, body burning. The spiral. Back at his apartment, Daniel collapsed onto his bed, staring at the ceiling with a wild grin. He should have been frustrated she kept pulling back, denying him. But instead, he felt electrified. It wasn't just physical. It was deeper, the way she drew him in, the way she tested him, the way she demanded trust. He was hooked. He didn't know if this was love, lust, or something dangerous in between. All he knew was that he couldn't stop. And Emma knew it too. The promise of more. The next morning, he woke to a message. Friday 8 p.m. My place. Be ready for something different. Daniel stared at the screen, his pulse quickening. Something different. He didn't know what awaited him. But he knew one thing, Emma was leading him deeper, step by step, into something he couldn't escape. And he didn't want to. Friday arrived with a weight Daniel hadn't felt in years. All day, he couldn't focus, his hands restless, his thoughts consumed by what something different might mean. He replayed every moment with Emma, her teasing, her control, her tenderness when she opened up about her past. When the evening came, he dressed with care, dark shirt, jacket, not overdressed but intentional. As he approached her building, his chest tightened. He wasn't just nervous. He was expectant. The entrance. Emma opened the door before he could knock twice. She wore black again, but softer this time, a flowing dress that clung and shifted with every movement. Her eyes caught him immediately, sharp and warm at once. You're on time, she said, stepping aside. You told me not to be late, Daniel replied. Her lips curved faintly. Good listener. Inside, the apartment lights were dimmed, candles flickering on the shelves. Music played low, sultry, and slow. A bottle of wine sat open on the table, glasses half filled. Emma gestured for him to sit. Instead of taking her usual place opposite, she sat right beside him this time, their knees brushing. Relax, she murmured. I'm trying, Daniel said with a shaky laugh. She smirked. Trying too hard. The first move. They drank slowly, conversation flowing but punctuated by long silences. The silences were heavier now, charged, as if every pause carried the weight of choice. At one point, Emma set her glass down and turned to him fully. Do you remember what I told you last time? About patience. Daniel nodded. That waiting makes it better. Her smile deepened. Exactly. Tonight, I'll give you more but only because you've earned it. Before he could reply, she kissed him fierce, urgent, nothing like the restrained kisses before. Daniel responded immediately, his hand sliding to her waist, pulling her against him. This time, she didn't stop him. Letting go. The kiss deepened, their breaths quickening, the world collapsing to the heat of their bodies. Emma's fingers tangled in his hair, her other hand gripping his shirt as if anchoring herself. Daniel felt himself trembling not from fear, but from sheer intensity. Every nerve seemed alive, every touch magnified. When she finally pulled back, both of them breathless, Emma rested her forehead against his. You're still nervous, she whispered. Because I don't want to mess this up, Daniel admitted. Her laugh was soft, almost tender. You won't. Just stop thinking. And for once, he did. The surrender. They moved together as if guided by instinct, kisses trailing from lips to skin, hands exploring with care and urgency. Emma led, but this time she didn't hold back, she allowed him to follow, to match her, to meet her intensity. It was passionate, overwhelming, but never crude. Their intimacy wasn't about conquest or control, it was about release, about finally giving in to what they'd both been circling for weeks. Emma whispered his name more than once, her voice rough, raw, pulling him deeper into her. Daniel answered with touch, with devotion, showing her without words that he wasn't there to take anything, he was there to share it. For the first time, there was no test, no push or pull. There was only surrender. The stillness after. Later, they lay tangled together on the couch, the candles burning low. Emma rested her head against his chest, her fingers tracing lazy circles on his skin. The air was warm, heavy with the scent of wine and closeness. For a long time, neither spoke. Finally, Emma broke the silence. You surprised me. Daniel glanced down at her. How? You didn't try to win. You didn't try to prove anything. You just were with me. Because that's all I wanted, Daniel said softly. Her eyes lifted to his, softer than he had ever seen them. For once, she wasn't guarded. She wasn't teasing or testing. She was simply present. You might actually be dangerous, she whispered. Daniel frowned slightly. Dangerous. Her smile was faint. Because you make me want to believe again. The vulnerability. She shifted then, sitting up, pulling the blanket around her shoulders. For a moment, she looked almost fragile, a version of Emma Daniel hadn't seen before. You know I'm not easy, she said quietly. I know, Daniel replied. I'll pull away sometimes. I'll test you. Not because I want to hurt you but because I need to know I won't lose myself again. Daniel sat up too, reaching for her hand. Then test me. Push me. Whatever you need. I'm not going anywhere. Her eyes searched his, as if trying to find a catch. But there wasn't one. And slowly, she leaned in and kissed him again, soft, grateful, lingering. The morning. Daniel stayed the night, though sleep came only in fragments. When dawn filtered through the curtains, he woke to find Emma watching him quietly. What? He asked, groggy. Nothing, she said with a small smile. Just making sure you're real. He reached for her hand, squeezing gently. I am. She laughed softly. Then maybe I'll let you stay a little longer. The resolution. In the days that followed, their rhythm shifted. Emma still kept her edge, still teased, still pulled away sometimes, but now there was something steadier underneath. Trust. They walked together through the city at night, shared meals, argued playfully over books, kissed in the quiet corners of cafes. Their passion hadn't dimmed, but it no longer carried the same uncertainty. Daniel knew it wasn't perfect. Emma was still complex, still layered with shadows from her past. But that was part of her, and he didn't want to erase it. He wanted her exactly as she was, storm and calm, fire and restraint. And Emma, for the first time in years, allowed herself to believe that maybe this could last. Final scene. One evening, weeks later, they sat on her balcony, glasses of wine in hand, the city glowing beneath them. The air was cool, carrying the faint hum of traffic. Emma leaned against him, her head on his shoulder. You know, she murmured, when I first saw you in that cafe, I didn't think you'd matter. You looked harmless. Daniel laughed. Thanks. And now? He asked. Emma smiled, closing her eyes. Now you're the one thing I don't want to lose. Daniel kissed the top of her head gently, his chest tightening with something more than desire, something like love. Then you won't, he whispered. And as the city lights flickered below them, they sat together in silence, no longer strangers, no longer uncertain, but something new. Something worth holding onto.